feel like we really need to do a little bit of first things first, if that even makes sense. So I'm excited about starting this kind of different vlog series called After the Sermon, or maybe Behind the Sermon. I don't know what it's going to be called yet. I'll figure that out before I post this first video. So you'll find the answer to that question in the first video. But what I want to do is just really have a space to talk about the sermons a little bit more. So maybe there's some things I didn't go as in-depth with as I would have liked to, or there's some things that got left out, or there's just some more thoughts I have. I typically watch the sermons on like Tuesday morning and watch them a couple of times to just reflect over things and to think about things and where I can get going better. So I'll probably end up posting these midweek. Excited about this as a project. I really hope I have the margin to keep it going because I think it's important. But looking forward just to sharing what sermons are made out of and what they look like in my life, but also in the life of a church, because I believe that messages are deeply and intentionally tied into the places where they are preached. There's some things that just can't be taken elsewhere. I believe that pretty strongly. There's also some messages that completely are appropriate to bring into other places as well. So I'll be talking about preaching a lot and preaching specific messages and what that means to me. So thanks for coming along for the ride. Expect a lot of different shots, a lot of different places. We'll do this in a lot of spots. Stoked about it. What they don't tell you about this whole preaching thing is that the hardest part is the fact that you got to go do it every single week. Every week. So the whiteboard. I use a whiteboard in sermon preparation and thinking every single thing I do. I'm a whiteboard guy. I think there should be whiteboards everywhere. So this is what's going on. Typically, we think of Leviticus, like the gnarliest, the kind of most depressing, the craziest book in the Old Testament, full of a bunch of weird stuff that we don't want to do. And it has this section that's called the Holiness Book. That's in it. It's about a third of Leviticus. It's in the teens and the 20s. I can't think of the top of my head exactly where it is. But this is this part of God's people understanding they're being set apart. And what we would do more often than not is read like single verses into this. So like some of the verses that we use on Sunday. And we just see those and we see prohibitions and we don't know what to do with those. And there's tons of prohibitions and all sorts of things that are in Leviticus. And then we have the 19:18, the whole do not covet bit, do not cause anger, and do not go against your neighbor, but love your neighbor as yourself, because I'm the Lord your God. And so if we're looking at just like these gnarly ones, we're going to be frustrated. When we look at this whole big piece right here, it makes a little bit more sense. But we can also do this. So the Pentateuch, it means the five. These are the Torah. These are the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. All very different books, but all necessary to tell the story of God and his people and God identifying his people. And we find these neighbor prohibition passages that we talked about in a couple of the books. And so we see them in Exodus, which is the beginning of this whole formation of people. And we see them in Leviticus, and it culminates in this idea of love your neighbor. Love your neighbor as yourself. That we should understand that neighborhood and neighboring is about reciprocity. And so that's there. And then we can fast forward, like super fast forward, like boom, all the way to the Gospels. And the story of Jesus, who's cornered. He's trapped. And this Pharisee asks him, he said, well, what's the greatest commandment? And he says, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and your mind and your soul and your strength. To love God with your complete person and every single part of you that makes you uniquely you. And then to love your neighbor as yourself. So to the level that you seek God and in your relationship with God, that you're understanding who God made you to be and understanding who you are in relationship with God, that you should then take the excitement and the whole 9 yards of stuff that comes from that and then extend that to some other person. Like we said on Sunday, that our neighboring with someone in a biblical sense should be us looking at them and saying, I want your life to be as awesome as I want my life to be. So you see, we go from this more like prohibition side of things, assuming conflict, to assuming we're loved by God, and sharing our love and understanding with others. And this is the thing. Some people call this biblical theology. I struggle with that a little bit. But this is maybe canonical, so canon, the whole entirety of Scripture. Maybe this is, I'm more comfortable with the idea of canonical theology. But this is us taking all of God's Scripture, all of this revelation that's been given to us, these people's experiences of their relationships with God and their trials and their struggles, and us seeing how Jesus is expanding upon things. When he said, I'm not come to abolish the law and the prophets, but to fulfill it in Matthew. He's taking what God had, and it's all that these folks could kind of handle and understand at this point, and then he's just spreading it out big and huge and wide. It's a completely different thing. So, whiteboard, biblical theology, just how you get from Leviticus to the Gospels. So for the last couple of days, I've been working on this and had some really cool ideas. Didn't pan out as much as I would have liked them to, but I always tell folks it's important just to ship things. Like, you got to ship it. You got to get it out, make it work, get out in public. Don't worry about perfection. And so, if you stuck around this long, thanks for sticking around. Working on what this format looks like. Figuring out if I like it or not. Excited about it, but still getting stuff squirreled away. That's cool, though. So, stick around. Next week we'll be back. Hopefully, I want to figure out how to make the whiteboard work better. That's definitely a big thing. I want to figure out how the whiteboard can work better. That's a pretty important thing for this, for me. Also, want to be able to share the resources I'm using, and then just to have some more sermon stuff in there about what's going on. So thanks for sticking around. Thanks for being here. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Just looking to build up a cool video resourcing community here